3 spine-chilling true stories of sinister encounters alone at night, unexplained horrors revealed. Laura wiped down the last table at the diner, the flickering fluorescent lights casting an eerie glow that felt all wrong. Alone in the stillness, she couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching her. Each late-night shift stretched her nerves to the breaking point. She had an innocent responsibility waiting for her at home, Ethan, the little boy whose bright laughter filled her days. But the creeping darkness of the night seemed insatiable, ready to swallow them whole. As she finally stepped outside, the soft chirping of crickets wrapped around her like a deceptive blanket of calm. A moment of relief fused with deep-seated worry. She unlocked her car and settled in, her heart pounding at the thought of the empty house awaiting her. Little could she anticipate the jolt of fear that would wrench her focus from the road. When her phone buzzed, she startled, heart racing. A text from an unknown number lit up the screen. "I see you at the diner every night. You haven't forgotten the way home, have you?" Panic surged as she gripped the wheel tightly. How could someone know her routine so intimately? The comforting suburbs of Maple Grove now felt like a vast maze of lurking danger. Shadows danced at the edges of her vision as her apprehension blossomed into full-blown terror. What else did this stranger know? The following days became a blur of dread. Each time Laura returned home, every creak of the floorboard sent jolts of fear up her spine. Figures flitted past her window, too quick to be real. She could swear they were watching her, taking notes on her every move. The whispers of the neighbors, once comforting, now seemed veiled in speculation and judgment. When her co-worker, Margot, disappeared, it shattered whatever semblance of safety remained in Maple Grove. But when she reached out to the police, their indifferent responses sank into her bones. Just another sad case, they shrugged, and she felt the horror deep within her sink like a stone. Then came the night Ethan went missing. Laura's heart raced as she dashed through the streets, darkness thick around her. Every familiar tree loomed ominously, seemingly mocking her as she yelled for him. The shadows conspired against her sanity, abandoned lots littered her path, each taunting the reality of her worst fears. She could feel them tightening around her, squeezing the breath from her lungs with jagged teeth of despair. Just when she thought hope faded, she spotted something. A figure stood in the distance, tall, almost ethereal. Recognition tinged with horror clawed at her mind. It was that same sinister presence she'd glimpsed before, but now it moved closer, pulling her into a paralyzing void of dread. With each step, a chilling smile crept into view. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The figure lingered, a tapestry of shadows swirling around them, as if the night itself had taken on a form. Laura's breaths turned shallow, her instincts screamed for those anxieties to manifest into something real. She felt her sanity slip as she tried to piece together the darkness within her community that had entangled her life. How much was a mother willing to sacrifice? Her body locked, legs trembling in place while fear surged like fire through her veins. She could either confront this impending horror, or let it consume everything she loved. As the figure stepped closer, her heart thundered at the cusp of revelation. All the trust she held in her neighbors teetered on the edge, threatening to collapse into chaos. How would she reclaim Ethan, if her very own world stood against her? The figure loomed larger, its face obscured by a shroud of darkness, a malevolent shadow between Laura and everything she held dear. She could almost hear her heartbeat echoing in the silence, pounding in time with the mounting dread smothering her senses. As the silhouette swelled before her, she bolstered herself, pushing forward instead of retreating. This was no ghost, it was flesh and blood, a predator lurking, waiting for the opportune moment to pounce. "Where's Ethan?" she shouted, her voice cracking, desperation painting a raw urgency through the night air. The figure stepped into a sliver of light, a street lamp flickering wretchedly, its glow barely lifting the veil of menace. And there it was, a grin stretched unnaturally across the figure's face, as if every ounce of malice sharpened its form. Panic gripped Laura harder, cold sweat trickled down her spine. Was this what they intended? All along? Wouldn't you like to know? The voice was smooth, dripping with disdain, every word a taunt as eerie laughter bubbled beneath it. Laura shivered, trembling not just from the chill in the air, but from the realization that Ethan was not just missing, his absence felt deliberate. She had traded her sense of safety for ignorance, and she could feel every single choice weighing down on her shoulders. With immense fortitude, she took a daring step closer, wrestling to regain control over the swirling chaos in her mind. "What have you done to him?" she pressed, baring her teeth like a cornered animal, though she could feel how weak the facade was. The figure only chuckled, an unsettling sound that sent shudders down her spine. "Maybe you'll find out." But the game's not over yet. The answer floated in the air like a whisper that curled around her neck like a noose, tightening with every breath she took. With her heart racing, Laura caught a glimpse of something, movement behind the figure, a fleeting shadow darting through the darkness. Her breath hitched. Ethan. Her instincts ignited, warning bells sounded in her mind. Was he close by? Suddenly, the figure raised a hand, extending long, bony fingers. The gesture beckoned her forward, as if she were simply meant to follow, yet the warning thrummed louder than anything else in her being. She had felt the darkness closing in around her, but now an insidious urge crept into her heart, a chance to reclaim what had been lost. What choice did she have left? "Stop!" she demanded, taking another step closer. Each movement felt weighted with consequence, drawn towards the shadowy figure as part of some elaborate puppet show. For every heartbeat, for every breath, she held her children's soft laughter close, reminding herself of the preciousness of hope amidst this horror. But the moment hung heavy in the night air, and suddenly, she caught a glint of metal in the figure's other hand. What was it? Panic surged anew, resonating with her pulse. The figure stepped back, just grazing the edge of visibility. Then, as if pulled by an unseen force, Laura moved forward, compelled by instinct and urgency. That might be Ethan. As she leaped into the darkness, the world around her spun, and the sensation of being watched morphed into something more tangible, more vile. Eyes glared from every corner of the street now, as the others emerged, shadows morphing into twisted faces of familiarity, her neighbors, lurking, judging. "Join us please," they whispered in unison, a chorus tinged with unholy glee as they stepped forward, encircling her. The figure, the stranger's every hair on her body stood on end. Who were they? What demand could possibly lead to the disappearance of her little boy? Every moment felt dire, the air thick with dread. Not just a game anymore, she thought, her mind racing with thoughts of escape. Yet even as she cried out, her voice shrank to a whisper, barely breaking through to the surface of her swirling fear. The sinister gathering closed in while she fought against the pull to reveal her own secrets, and suddenly, she heard a sound, an echoing cry, familiar and pained. And then silence, swallowed by the night. What waited for her next could reveal answers hidden in the shadows or lead her deeper into the abyss. Would the truth break her or set her free? The whispering escalated as the crowd pressed closer, their faces a grotesque mix of expectation and malice. Laura's heart thudded violently against her ribcage, every pulse echoing the urgency of her thoughts. She strained to hear more, fighting the waves of despair crashing over her. The night felt alive, a living creature wrapping around her, tightening its grip. "Ethan," she called again, voice hoarse, desperation coloring her words. But no response came, only muffled laughter from the shadows. The figure's grin widened, the metallic glint in its hand revealing a knife, a weapon crafted for terror more than harm. "Don't you want to play?" the figure teased, its voice mocking, cold and deliberate. The neighbors moved like a tide, pushing and swirling, their intent suffusing the air like a poison. She shook her head, breath coming in rapid bursts. You've taken him from me." The accusation hung between them, raw and piercing. She could feel their gaze boring into her soul, stripping away the layers of her sanity. Taken? No, dear Laura. He's right where he belongs. The figure leaned in closer, the stench of decay hitting her nostrils and making bile rise in her throat. But you can't save him yet. Not without a price. Would you trade your secrets for his safety? The question recoiled in her mind, her breath hitching. What secrets? She was no one, just a mother desperately trying to protect her son. The memories of her life jolted forward her old fears, regrets, the night she swore she would always keep her family safe. Your neighbors have offered a deal. It gestured lazily, the crowd's faces reflecting grotesque anticipation, eagerly awaiting her decision. All you must do is let go of your past. Embrace the darkness. With every heartbeat, the walls began to close in. The laughter crescendoed, mingling with the sinister murmuring, forming a dreadful symphony. She turned, desperate to escape the eyes that followed her, but every angle brought the threat closer, more palpable. She couldn't turn back, and she couldn't move forward. Then, without warning, a shriek shattered the encroaching madness. It pierced her heart, a deeply familiar sound. Ethan. Laura. He cried, and the world around her paused. Her breath hitched as hope flickered, the tiniest spark battling to ignite. I'm here, honey. Where are you? The words came tumbling out, carried on a tide of gut-wrenching fear. Help me. His voice faded as the figure stepped forward, cutting through her resolve. They won't let me go. Enough. The figure thundered, clenching the knife tighter, sending a jolt of fear coursing through Laura. It's simple, it whispered menacingly, join us or lose him forever. Panic engulfed her. What price was too high? The neighbors began chanting, their voices melding into a cacophony of noise. Laura could feel the world tilting, reality ripping at the seams. Then, from somewhere deep within, a surge of defiance flared. No! She shouted, ripping free of their hold. She took a step back, her adrenaline igniting wild thoughts in her mind. I refuse to play your sick game. Laughter erupted, echoing through the alleys like a death knell. Then you've chosen the hard path. Suddenly, the shadows reared, twisting and warping. The figure lunged, the knife glinting in the dim light, but Laura dodged sideways, heart racing. She shoved past those twisted faces, fueled by a frantic desperation to find her son. Ethan. She screamed, but the ground seemed to shift beneath her, the darkness fighting against her feet like a heavy shroud. But as she pushed through the throng, reality twisted again. Faces transformed into horrid caricatures of the people she knew, friends and neighbors, now wild and deranged. Their voices blended into unrecognizable shouts, overwhelming her, pulling her into the abyss. Then she saw him, his small figure trapped within a circle of shadows, eyes wide with fear. Mom! He cried again, a plea that ignited every instinct inside her. But as Laura lunged forward, something cold wrapped around her ankle, pulling her down. You cannot escape. You cannot save him. The figure stood over her, a victorious grin plastered on its face. The knife gleamed, ready to strike. What was about to happen next could either set her son free or seal their fate in darkness forever. Laura felt the cold grip tighten, each second stretching into agony. Panic surged through her as the shadows whispered promises of despair. The figure towered above her, casting a monstrous silhouette. Do you feel it? It whispered, voice dripping with malice. The darkness you've always feared. It's closer than you think. Gritting her teeth, Laura clawed at the ground, fighting against the icy tendrils that threatened to pull her under. Let me go. It came out as a desperate growl, a raw determination boiling to the surface. The laughter from the crowd grew louder, a relentless wave crashing down upon her, suffocating her spirit. What will you give up, Laura? The figure asked, kneeling closer, its breath hot and rancid. Your past, your memories, or your son? Stay away from him. She shouted, strength surging through her veins. Ethan. I'm coming. With one final, furious jerk, she yanked her foot free. She stumbled upright, her heart pounding. She had to reach Ethan. She had to save him. Laura pushed through the maddened crowd, fury igniting every muscle. But the path was dark, the world spun. The smiling faces twisted into nightmare shapes, every familiar person a mask of horror. They reached for her, fingers curling around her arms, pulling her closer. "Join us, Laura. We are waiting," they chanted, stumbling back. She caught sight of Ethan's terrified expression still trapped within a writhing circle of shadows. "Mom!" He cried again, but this time it was weaker, fading. "No!" This time, the cry erupted like a thunderclap. Ignoring the figures grasping at her, she ripped away from their hold and hurled herself toward her son. As she stepped forward, dark shapes slithered at her feet, attempting to ensnare her again. They were relentless, their whispers now a roar, echoing insidious promises in her ears. "Join us, give and we'll take care of him, shut up." She screamed, forcing her way through the crowd who continued to chant and jeer, their amusement grotesque as if feeding on her fear. And then, as if the universe had shifted in her favor, the knot of shadows around Ethan broke, allowing him a sliver of light. He darted forward, eyes pleading, tears streaking down his dirty face. "Mom, please." She reached for him, just a fingertip away. But the weight of the crowd pulsed like a living thing, forcing her back. No. It felt like an invisible wall. "Ethan!" She cried, lunging again, focusing only on him. He was her lifeline, her hope. Shattering through the oppressive force, she dove. Her fingertips brushed his, a spark igniting between them. But that spark lit the rage of the figure. "You think you can escape?" It hissed, lunging forward, knife glistening. With nothing left to lose, Laura mirrored her son's desperation, gripping his hand as tightly as she could. The shadows writhed around them, and the figure's laugh turned manic. Then she felt a searing pain, the knife plunging into her side. "Let us in!" It shrieked, as her vision blurred. "Feel the darkness." The crowd closed in with violent fervor, chanting their dark hymn. The world around her twisted, her son's voice becoming muffled and distant, fading like smoke. And just as the darkness began to swallow her whole, a thought pierced through the haze. The price was not yet paid before she could grasp its meaning. The world blackened entirely, leaving behind only shadows and silence. What would it take to break the bonds of darkness? Suddenly, she felt the chill of freedom. But at what cost? Laura's consciousness flickered like a dying candle, teetering between warmth and the suffocating cold of darkness. She felt the painful stab in her side, its heat blooming like a flower of despair. But just beneath the surface, a whisper ignited the embers of her spirit. "Not yet, it's not over." With a gasp, she opened her eyes, the world melting back into view. She lay on the cold ground, her heart hammering in her chest. Above her loomed the figure, still holding its knife, eyes burning with malice. But something felt different. The crowd that had once surrounded her now appeared farther away. The laughter had dimmed to a distant echo, replaced by an uneasy silence. "Ethan!" Panic surged again. She pushed herself upright, ignoring the searing pain flaring at her side. She looked around. She was still in the circle of shadows, but it felt thinner, as if the darkness had retreated a step. She spotted him. Ethan stood a few feet away, trembling, his small frame swallowed by looming shadows. Each shadow seemed eager to consume his light, but her son stood defiant. "Mom!" he cried, tears streaming down his face. "It's okay, baby." She reached out, but the shadows coiled around Ethan like snakes. "Stay strong. I'm coming." Her words felt like lifelines, a pulling urge to bridge the gap between them. Yet, the ground beneath her feet trembled. The cold grip tightened around her, gnawing at the edges of her resolve. "Join us, be one of us." The whispering voices surged anew, a cacophony of enticing promises that spiraled into her mind. Memories flickered, fearful faces, each one familiar but twisted as though drawn by a cruel hand. Laura stumbled towards Ethan, daring to defy the churning shadows. The figure watched, amusement dancing in its eyes. "You think you're brave, but there is only one way out of this." It brandished the knife, the blade glinting eerily in the fractured light. "Shut up!" she shouted, the words ripping from her throat. Every ounce of strength surged through her. Her vision focused on Ethan, the center of her world. The crowd pulsed as she surged forward. "Your grip can't hold me anymore." With a forceful breath, she broke through the barrier of darkness. Light flared around her, the warmth sweeping over her like a comforting blanket. The madness of the crowd dimmed, they recoiled as if stung. Laura felt a surge of freedom, a will to fight. "Ethan!" she cried again, reaching out with everything she had. Just as their hands met, she felt the figure's icy presence loom again. "You'll pay for this." It howled with rage. But Laura was no longer frightened. The pain in her side throbbed, but it wasn't the only thing coursing through her. Power flowed within her, fed by her love for her son, but the figure wasn't finished. Deeper shadows pulsed with vengeance, stretching towards her, pulling at her feet, wrapping around her ankles with icy fingers. "They will take you," it screeched. Laura locked eyes with Ethan, the bond between them fraying but not breaking. "We can fight this together," she urged, her voice steady amid the chaos. With one powerful tug, she pulled Ethan closer, their fingers intertwining, a warmth igniting in the darkness. "But what about the price?" he asked, voice trembling. "What price?" The question echoed, curdling the air around them. "Let me go." The figure roared, rising above them, darkness embracing its form. Laura squared her shoulders, a tremor of determination wrapping around her heart. "No. We are stronger. We are light." As she spoke, the shadows recoiled, shrieking in anger. But then, something shifted. The darkness split, a crack of light pierced through. And in that split moment, she saw it their escape. "Ethan, run!" she shouted, yanking him toward the jagged edge of light. They charged forward, merging with the bright stream, but darkness clawed at them, relentless and angry. Would they be able to escape the figure's grip, or would sacrifice demand a heavier toll? A voice from the shadows whispered, "You don't know what you're risking." As they leapt toward the light, they braced for the unknown, minds racing with the desperate hope that freedom awaited them on the other side. They burst through the crack of light, propelled by a surge of hope. But the moment they did, the brightness twisted, distorting their surroundings in a cruel trick. Instead of the safety of the outside world, they tumbled into a thick fog, swirling and alive, disorienting their senses. "Mom!" Ethan's voice quivered, thin against the fog. "Where are we?" "Stay close," she called, grabbing his hand tight, desperation wrapping around her like the cold mist. The air felt heavy, thick with something unspoken, lurking just beyond their sight. Every breath became a battle, as stinging chills seeped through Laura's skin, casting doubt into her heart. Were they truly free or merely trapped in a new nightmare? The darkness had followed them, shifting silently in the shadows around them. With each step, the soft ground rippled beneath their feet, resisting their movement. The fog thickened, wrapping tighter, foghorn voices lingering in the air. "Come back, stay with us, it's just the fog," Laura reassured, sending a quick glance behind her, searching for any sign of the figure. Heart racing, she fought against the freezing fingers creeping over her and Ethan. She couldn't lose him now, not after everything. Mum. A sudden yank on her hand startled her. Ethan was pulled backward, the fog consuming him in an instant. "Ethan!" Panic surged anew, forcing her body into a headlong dive toward the spot he vanished. Every instinct screamed to retreat, to flee back to the light, but the terror of being separated snapped her focus. "Ethan!" Shadows danced at the edges of her vision, whispering promises of warmth. "Join us, be whole, no!" she shouted, swinging her arms to dispel the suffocating darkness. They were lies, lies wrapped in false comfort. Suddenly, she saw him, a figure ahead, his outlines flickering with each breath of the mist. Ethan. Her legs propelled her forward, but the ground swallowed her steps, each inch a grueling fight. She could feel the shadows clawing at her ankles, their tendrils trying to grasp her, to pull her back into the suffocating embrace of despair. A shriek pierced through the fog, raw and echoing. "Let him go." The words were powerful, almost real. Laura felt her heart lift, but doubt swallowed it quickly. Had Ethan called her? Or was it the darkness, playing with her mind? When she reached him, she saw confusion mirrored in his eyes. "Mom, I can't." He was fighting something unseen, terror etched into his small features. "What is happening, Ethan?" she gasped, locking her arms around him. But before he could answer, shadows lunged from the ground, rising and twisting around them. Laura felt the temperature drop, pain rippling through her, calling back to the knife and the figure's icy grip. "Mom!" Ethan screamed as coldness gripped him, forcing him into the fog. "Stand firm!" she screamed, desperation breaking her voice. "We can't give in." The shadows recoiled slightly at her determination, but the air thickened, turning her resolve to ice. She needed to fight. She needed to remember what brought them here, what drove the darkness away: love. The very essence of light that she had felt during their escape. "I refuse," she yelled, forcing the words from within. "You will not take him." As if in response, the figure materialized from the fog, an outline of twisted malice, knife in hand. "You think you can challenge me? You have no power here. I have everything." Laura shouted back, her hands trembling, feeling the warmth of Ethan's small fingers, their bond stronger than the shadows. The figure laughed, its voice deep and menacing, curling around her sanity. "You're mistaken." Suddenly, flares of blinding light erupted from her fingertips, illuminating the darkness. Shadows shrieked and lashed out, trying to swallow the light. But she pressed forward, together with Ethan, bridging their strength. "Follow my lead, Ethan." She felt the weight of the darkness press against her, but a fierce light erupted within her, a white-hot flame igniting against the indifference of the void. "Mom!" Ethan yelled, joining his energy with her, the cracks of light dancing around them, a fragile halo against encroaching despair. But still, they stood on the precipice, the figure looming, eyes burning with fury. "This isn't over," it hissed, shadows writhing around it as it stepped closer. "Enough!" Laura roared, ready to unleash everything they had for their last stand. The pulse of her heart quickened, the stakes higher than ever. Would their combined light banish the figure once and for all, or would the shadows wrap tighter around them? The fog thickened, whispers and screams rising again, and Laura braced for the ultimate confrontation, uncertain of their fate. Will they sever the bond of darkness or become its prisoners forever? The moment the words escaped her lips, a wail pierced the fog, a sound like shattered glass. The air vibrated with tension as Laura lunged forward, feeling the raw and potent energy of their combined light expanding with every breath. Her heart pounded in rhythm with the shadow's pulse, an echo of dread that entwined around them both. "Ethan, stay with me," she shouted, her voice a lifeline against the chilling emptiness. The shadowy figure twitched, its outline twisting more grotesquely with each flicker of their light, a monstrous parody of humanity driven mad by darkness. But suddenly, the sphere of light around them pulsed, dimming momentarily as if the very essence of hope was under siege. "No," Laura whispered, panic clawing at her throat. "Not now." She felt Ethan's small, trembling hand slip, and in that horrifying second, she turned, forcing herself to breathe. "We can do this, together." The figure shot forward, knife glinting like a falling star, slicing through the air with a merciless thrill. Laura didn't think she reacted. With a desperate swing of her arm, she pushed Ethan behind her, smack into the hot pulse of light. She could feel its warmth, radiating love, desperation, and strength, mixing with the fear that clawed at her insides. "Back!" she screamed, her voice a raw edge. A wave of light exploded outward, pushing the figure back. But the shadows roared in fury, biting at their ankles, whispering sweet promises of surrender, the kind that would leave them without pain or fear. "You can't fight forever," they chanted, their voices like the rustling of leaves on a windless night. "Yes, I can," Laura shouted back, raw determination spilling from her. She could feel something shifting inside of her, the light coursing through her veins. It whispered to her, igniting every ounce of hope they ever had, memories of laughter and joy, the warmth of sunlight breaking through a darkened sky. But the shadows would not be quelled. They surged forward, wrapping tighter around her legs, dragging her down. Ethan was still behind her, trapped between light and suffocating darkness, and terror shot through her. "Hold on, Ethan," she cried, fighting the force that sought to pull her under. "Mom! I can't, it's too strong." His small voice was barely audible over the cacophony. She felt the coldness of despair claw at her mind, threatening to enshroud her. "No. You're stronger than this," she yelled. And the light flickered in response, shattering the shadowy tendrils inching their way up her legs. But with every ounce of resolve Laura poured into that shimmering sphere, the figure laughed again, a sound that dug into her soul. "Love? Do you really think that can hold me back? You have no idea what's to come." Frozen dread settled in the pit of Laura's stomach as a ripple of shadows unfolded around them, transforming the fog into a swirling vortex, their homeland of hopes twisting into a surreal nightmare. Every terrified moment felt stretched in a slow motion, raising the stakes to unbearable heights. "Mom! Look!" Ethan shouted, pointing to the fog thickening behind them. A massive shadow shifted, tentacles of darkness coiling like snakes, creeping closer, their hunger palpable. "No, no," Laura gasped, dread weighing her down as she felt the struggle of light and dark waging war around them. Panic surged. What if they didn't have enough strength to hold it back? "Ethan, stay close!" She screamed again, but her voice echoed like a distant memory, swallowed by the oncoming tide of despair, and then the figure lunged from the shroud, the knife glinting once more, but this time it wasn't aimed at just them. It sliced through the fog, unraveling the very fabric of their sanctuary. A thunderous crack split the world around them, the barriers between nightmares collapsing, sending a tremor through their very souls. "Mom!" Ethan cried as their light flickered erratically. Laura felt herself teetering on the edge, trapped between will and darkness, but a thought cut through her frenzy: there had to be a way to break this cycle. Time was running out. The weight of shadows pressed harder. "What do you want from us?" she screamed into the void, desperation lacing her voice. But the figure's smile widened, as if the darkness itself spoke. "You'll find out soon enough." In that moment, the fog thickened, surrounding them like a shroud, swallowing everything in silence as their defenses crumbled. What awaited them on the other side of the veil? They had to know. But would they dare confront it? The fog closed in like a vice, tightening around them as the shadows crept closer. Laura felt her breath quicken, panic rising in her throat. At that moment, everything around her pulsated with uncertainty, drowning out her logic. She could feel Ethan trembling behind her, his fear palpable and echoing through their bond. "Stay strong, Ethan. We're almost," she began, but doubt clawed at her insides. What if the darkness consumed them entirely? The figure lunged again, and the shadows swirled, creating a cyclone of despair. Laura's heart thundered in her chest. "I won't let you take him," she shouted into the abyss, pushing her fear aside, willing the warm light to burst forth from within her, and then, it happened. An explosion of light burst from her core, illuminating the dark in a periphery of blinding white. But the shadows writhed, twisting around the light like dark tendrils reaching for something more vulnerable. "Foolish girl," the figure hissed, its voice a terrible scraping across Laura's mind. "Your light only makes the darkness stronger." With a swipe of its blade, the shadows lashed out, striking the ground beside them. The ground quaked, cracking open as a surge of primal fear coursed through Laura's veins. Ethan cried out, and the sound was a shattering echo, filling her ears with dread. "Mom! It's everywhere. As the fissure widened, Laura could see dark shapes moving in the depths, countless eyes glimmering like sharp stars within a void. They were watching. Waiting. Run! She commanded, yanking Ethan's hand as she propelled them forward, the space around them shifting as the boundary between light and shadow thinned. They dashed ahead, the knife-sliced air peppered with the whispers of the shadows that pursued them. You think you can escape? They taunted, their voices intertwining in a symphony of despair, but ahead, Laura saw a hint of warmth, of safety growing just beyond the fog. There! She shouted, pointing toward the light. Do you see it? We can reach it. The figure, now a grotesque mockery of a man, lunged forward, reaching for them with a hand as cold as death. You won't escape this time. Laura's heart raced. They were so close. She called upon every ounce of strength within her, channeling memories of love and joy, of laughter that had echoed in their home. The light responded, swelling up, pushing back against the dark waves crashing around them. I won't let you take my son. She screamed, letting the light burst from her, resulting in a brilliant glare that washed over everything, pushing the shadows back like a rising tide. With one last desperate push, they sprinted toward the haven, but just as they reached the edge, the shadows clutched her ankles, pulling her back into the abyss. As Laura stumbled, she felt Ethan's grip slipping. No! She screamed, dragging her arm in futility to reach for him, but the darkness tugged harder, tearing her away from the last beacon of hope. Mom! Ethan's voice pierced her heart, a harbinger of his own terror as the light around him flickered and threatened to fail. She could feel herself slipping, the grip of despair tightening around her throat. Ethan! I'm here. But no, the darkness was overwhelming. The acrid smell of fear thickened, clouding her thoughts. The shadows began to whisper promises of safety, promises that she could simply give in. No, she gasped, fighting against the spiraling void. I won't surrender. But the figure loomed, ever closer, its grin spreading wider, full of malice and darkness. You're already mine, and soon, so will he be. In that moment, Laura made a decision. If she was going to save Ethan, she would have to confront the darkness head-on, even if it meant giving everything she had. She pulled her focus inward, trying to remember the flickers of light from happier times, and concentrated as a true storm brewed in her chest. Then she whispered, Ethan, I need you. Fight with me. And as she spoke, she felt the vibrations of light surrounding them shift, a fuse igniting within the dark. The shadows halted momentarily, confused. Together. She breathed, the word barely escaping her lips as cold fingertips brushed against her skin. Time froze around them, filled with tension. What would Ethan do? Would they both stand and fight? The darkness was gathering again, and she needed to know, would they take that fateful step into the unknown? The shadows pulsed around Laura, and the figure lunged again, its blade glinting wickedly in the fading light. Ethan was still there, his heart racing against hers, and even in the chaos, she felt a flicker of hope. They had to unite, to create something stronger than the fear that wrapped around them like a suffocating blanket. Fight it, Ethan. She urged, more a plea than a command. We can push them back. He nodded, breathless, eyes wide with terror but gleaming with determination. Together, they drew on the memories, a wellspring of light in their minds, the laughter shared at the dinner table, the whispers after bedtime, the warmth of everyday love. With each moment, Laura felt the shadows hesitating, recoiling as if they sensed the power blending between mother and son. Then, with a synchronized exhale, they ignited a burst of golden radiance. The shadows dimmed, their whispers growing frantic. No. This isn't over. You don't belong in the light. They screeched, their voices scrambling together, churning like a storm. But Laura pressed on. You're wrong. She shouted. We are stronger than you. As they surged forward, the light enveloped them, pushing the darkness back, moment by moment. Yet, the malevolent figure slid closer, its features narrowing into an angry snarl, eyes fixated on Ethan. He's weak, just like you. It spat. Give him to me. You can't protect him forever. Laura felt thoughts of doubt racing back into her mind, curling around her heart. What if they couldn't finish this? What if the darkness seeped in and took Ethan away? She squeezed her eyes shut, blocking out the encroaching shadows. Think of everything you love. She shouted, urging Ethan to push back against the pain of fear. We have to remember. And it was in that moment that their light intensified, erupting from them like a beacon of pure energy. The shadows screamed, frantic and wild, their forms shifting, trying to protect their own essence from being devoured. But as the boundaries of light and shadow danced violently, the ground beneath them trembled, threatening to swallow them whole. Laura glanced back, and the fissure widened. The darkness looked alive, writhing and pulsating, as if breathing with its own twisted mind. Mom! It's coming! Ethan shouted, his voice breaking through the cacophony of chaos. Without thinking, she dropped to her knees, pulling Ethan close. The shadows screamed, clamping down like a predator lunging at its prey. Together. Laura repeated, forcing her voice beyond the panic tightening her throat. In that instant, it all became clear. They couldn't just fight the darkness. They had to embrace their bond, creating a surge so powerful it could obliterate the very fabric of fear that sought to tear them apart, the golden chain of light wrapped around them tighter, the energy harmonizing into an unbreakable force. The figure screamed, caught in the blaze. You think you can manage the darkness? It howled, losing its grasp, but rays of light burst outward, slicing through shadows with rage, scattering tendrils that clung to Laura's ankles. Then something unexpected happened. As the bright wave surged forth, Laura noticed that the eyes from the abyss were now unfurling, a stark glint of recognition flashing in their depths before disappearing back into the darkness. Mom! Its tension surged as the realization hit her, something more sinister lurked behind the figure, a greater darkness lying in wait. Before she could react, the shadows recoiled, swirling around them and obscuring the light. The warmth of hope began to fade, and then, a guttural voice echoed, You think you've won, but this is just the beginning. Suddenly, everything plunged into absolute stillness, thick with an unknown dread. What had they awakened? What other horrors had they unknowingly stirred into life? Time suspended as the shadows circled closer, and Laura's heart thundered. This battle was only the start. Laura's heart raced as the silence enveloped her and Ethan, a thick, suffocating blanket of uncertainty. The shadows closed in, flickering with menace, whispering dark promises that clawed at her mind and threatened to unravel her very spirit. We're not done yet. She shouted defiantly, even as the air grew cold. Ethan tugged on her sleeve, his small frame trembling beside her. Mom, I'm scared. What is happening? The ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse with a life of its own, shadows writhing like snakes, awaiting their moment to constrict. Laura couldn't let fear drown her resolve. Hold on tight, she whispered, gripping his hand fiercely. They would face this together, whatever nightmare lay ahead. They had already fought through so much. With each heartbeat, the silence stretched painfully, an oppressive weight bearing down. Time seemed to slow as the dark figure hovered, a grotesque mimicry of humanity, knife glimmering ominously. The air crackled with tension, and Laura could almost taste the fear radiating from the shadows. Do you see what you've done? It crooned, its voice a sickly sweet melody that dripped with derision. You've awakened something beyond your understanding. What comes next will consume you both. Not if we are together, Laura declared, infusing her voice with every ounce of strength. The flicker of light inside her burned bright, summoned by love and fierce determination. She tightened her grip on Ethan's hand, realizing that nothing could sever their bond. As if sensing her resolve, the shadows surged forward, wrapping around Laura's ankles, clawing, pulling, hoping to drag her back into the abyss. Join us. Embrace the darkness. Your fears are all around you. They howled in a tempest of noise. No. Laura screamed, her voice piercing the cacophony. You don't control me. You don't control us. Pushing back with raw ferocity, she closed her eyes for a brief second, envisioning warmth, laughter, moments of joy with Ethan sparking within her. Fight, Mom! Ethan cried, his voice small but unwavering, drawing from that wellspring of love. Laura plunged forward, pulling Ethan with her, their combined energy igniting light spilling forth like molten gold, pushing the shadows back, illuminating the corners of their entrapment. The monstrous figure recoiled, its expression shifting from smug arrogance to pale terror. I will not let you go. It shrieked, lunging, but the light hit it, splintering its form, causing it to writhe in agony. The shadows flickered and danced in response, but they were retreating. Together, Ethan. Laura urged, feeling the connection between them ignite like a raging fire. With each step, they swept the light outward, driving back the encroaching darkness. It was as if with every inch of ground gained, the figure became more desperate, its threats turning to panicked pleas. No. You can't do this. Then it happened. As they surged forward, creating a tunnel of brilliant light, the figure shattered, disintegrating into swirling dust, the shadows screaming in protest. But as the figure dissipated, so too did the darkness swirling around them, peeling back like the skin of an onion until beams of daylight pierced through, illuminating the fog hanging heavy in the air, and then silence. A sudden void after the storm. Laura looked around, her heart still racing, breathless with adrenaline. Did we? Ethan whispered, looking up at her with wide, hopeful eyes. Yes. We did it. She exclaimed, the flood of relief washing over her like a refreshing summer rain. The fog began to clear around them, revealing the gentle curvature of Maple Grove, the sun casting a warm glow across familiar streets, but as they stood there, the reality of their victory washed over them, still surrounded by remnants of the darkness they had faced. Shadows lingered at the edges, dim but tangible, an insidious reminder of the battle fought. Mom, Ethan said hesitantly, his voice dripping with worry. What if it comes back? Laura crouched down to his level, cupping his cheeks with trembling hands. It won't, she assured him, shaking her head firmly. We faced it together, and we'll face anything that comes next, as long as we stand together. Her words felt like iron chains binding them against future fears. With Ethan's smile returning, the sun breaking through the mist felt like a new beginning. Somehow together, they had crafted forward momentum, one that could not be taken easily. As they began to walk home, hand in hand, Laura took in the surroundings. It felt peaceful, the way sunlight kissed the grass, the chirping of birds filling the air, like a sweet song celebrating their escape from shadows. But behind her, as the shadows dissolved further into obscurity, a chilling whisper drifted on the wind, a promise: this is not the end. And even as Laura squeezed Ethan's hand tighter, a sense of resolve settled deep within her. They had survived the darkness, and they would always return to the light, together. As the sunset painted the sky with brilliant colors, she realized they were always stronger in unity, ready to face whatever lay ahead with hearts united and unwavering determination. Now, as the story draws to a close, I need you to take action. You need to subscribe to this channel immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that could ignite the same fire in you. Smash that like button now, it feeds the algorithm, bringing more content just like this directly to you. Fill the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this heart-pounding conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this adventure. Be the catalyst for their journey into the dark and the light.